Okay, so I'm in the middle of this BearHawk rebuild, and I'm more of a fix it than repair it kind of person, and I've come across on the rear shock mount a split here in the plastic. And so rather than go out and try and find a whole new rear shock mount assembly, I'm going to show you the way I would repair this so it's strong enough for everyday use. I'm also going to do a slightly different method with the shock mounting as well. I'm going to have a screw that goes all the way through this and then a nut holding the shock in coming from this side. So what we need is, I've got some fiberglass cloth here, and I'm not actually going to use the cloth, but I'm going to use some of these threads and then basically wind it up using this epoxy to hold everything in place. Once it's finished, you can sand it back and paint it black if you're a perfectionist, but we'll just see how it looks by the end of it. Alright, so I've got my 5-minute epoxy mixed up so the clock's ticking. I've taken my fiberglass thread from that piece of cloth I had, and I've got my needle nose pliers, which I think I'm going to need here. So let's see if I can do this without making a complete mess of it. Anytime I'm working with epoxy, it always ends up a bit of a mess, so let's just see how we go. First thing, I'm just going to cover the whole area in epoxy. I've made way too much there, but not to worry. And then the idea here is that every loop we do with the fiberglass thread is going to add pressure to hold it together, so when we drive our screw through it, it doesn't just open up again and it actually retains a bit of strength. Now the trick's going to be not having the loose ends. So if we start like this, and then just go around like this, and then if we can keep this thread out here, now we've got that thread sort of tied off, we're just going to snip that off. And then just very tightly wind this up. You can hear my fingers grabbing, rough fingers, and they're grabbing the fiberglass fibres every time I spin it round. And we'll just go back again. Try not to let it build up too much in the one spot. Trying to give it a nice even coverage of the split. Try and go all the way to the edge. Right, now with this loose piece, it's really not that necessary, but we're just going to pull it through here using the pliers, and just, if they'll grip it, and just tighten that off, and that's just going to tie it off nicely. And then we can just give it a tiny little bit more. I'm actually just going to use my finger here. A tiny little bit more epoxy just around the edge. Get rid of all the loose frays. I'm just moving my finger in the same way that all the fiberglass thread was being wound on. And that's to try and minimise any of it unravelling. Okay, so there we have it. I think that's a reasonably neat job, and I think it's going to be strong enough as well to carry the rear shock.